activists who marched to the Uganda High Commission offices in Riverside, Nairobi, to submit their petition have demanded the immediate and unconditional release of fellow activists Bob Njagi and Nicholas Oyoo, who were abducted in Kampala 9 days ago.
Now, of course, this is another episode. Yabaganda baffe bannakenya bawambibwa mu Uganda bali bazze okukyalirako His Excellency Kyagulanyi nga bwe nabategeezezzaako that was yesterday nti bannakenya bategeseeyo okwekalakaasa okwenjawulo era nga babadde in brief bategetinze embassies za Uganda si mu Kenya wokka wabula n'okwetooloola ensi ewali embassy ya Uganda bannakenya bagirumbe bakolerewo ensasage nga badimandinga bannakenya bannaabwe abawambibwa mu Uganda okubeera nga balelezingibwa olunaku olwaleero ku independence kwennyini ya Uganda wadde nze sigitwala nga independence because tewali independence yawo olunaku olwaleero ennyini bannakenya nga batimize up action ba activists abamu aba Uganda like if you look closely osobola okulengeramu at least omuntu ataddeko ka red beret olengera bulungi ku screen awo osobola ku identifyingamu omuntu ayambadde red beret implying comrades in Kenya that are Ugandans batimize up wamu ne bana Kenya abawangalira bannakenya abali attached to the Free Kenyan movement ne ba friends of Nicholas Oyoo ne Bob Njagi aba Free Kenyan movement ne ba marchinga ku Ugandan Embassy mu Kenya at the Uganda High Commission Nairobi. Now, of course, babadde ngerawo balaba bakute bipande ebiriko Nicholas Oyoo wamu ne Bob Njagi bakute placards wandikiddwako ebigambo free all political prisoners and abductions and genocide and abductions in East Africa. Balengera basazeeko wadde nti ngera luli era n'olwaliro mujjukire nti guno mulundi doza gwakubiri nga balumba embassy ya Uganda oli basanga nzigale ne bakonkona nga twano mwakola ki nga tewali n'omu agulawo. The same happened today era nga bayisiza wansi ekiwandiiko ekyo bakibateereyo oba n'abanga bakomyo ne baggulawo bajja kisangayo abaagala ate baagala so kyekyo kigenze mu maaso e Kenya naye nga ba petitions bakubye omulanga eri anyway. Before we go actually even deeper into the conversation, because there is a lot that I want to share with you on this matter. I want you to first at least update your mind, refresh your mind with at least something like this. Oberengoli in the know.
Have demanded the immediate and unconditional release of fellow activists Bob Njagi and Nicholas Oyoo, who were abducted in Kampala 9 days ago. The group has called out President Yoweri Museveni's regime for silencing dissent, criminalizing progressive voices, and weaponizing state machinery against those who dare dream of a just and free society. The activists have also demanded the immediate release of Ambassador Humphrey Polepole, who was abducted from his home in Dar es Salaam, Tanzania.
This blatant act of repression is not only an assault on two courageous young Kenyans, but a direct attack on the principles of democracy, political freedom, and cross-border solidarity. Their abduction is a part of a wider pattern of silencing dissent, criminalizing progressive voices.
Leo ni Bob, leo ni Oyoo, leo ni Humphrey Polepole, kesho ni wewe. Tafadhalini, wana Afrika Mashariki, tafadhali, tujitokeze, tuongee.
That we gave them our indication that today will be coming, but they chose to go on merriment. Whereas the family of Bob and Nicholas are just in tenterhook, not knowing the whereabouts of their children.
Uganda marks its 63rd Independence Day celebrations. In Kenya's capital, Nairobi, activists are calling on East African heads of state to address the alarming abduction trend in the region following the abduction of two Kenyan activists, Bob Njagi and Nicholas Oyoo, who went missing after they were allegedly abducted by the Ugandan army.
Kongamano la Mapinduzi condemns in the strongest...
Now you can clearly see our comrades also teaming up with the comrades in Kenya to demand the unconditional release of Nicholas Oyoo and Bobi Njagi. Right there is, I believe, a Ugandan activist residing in Kenya. Atimize puwamu nebana Kenya baberenga artisti batekawo pressure enjawulo okulaba nga banabwe batebwa. Yep.
Terms of the abduction of our comrades, Bobi Njagi and Nicholas Oyoo of the Free Kenya movement, who were forcefully taken while attending the campaign of Honorable Bobi Wine in Uganda.
An abduction which led activists and human rights organizations marched to the Ugandan High Commission in Kenya, calling for the immediate release and safe return of the 2 Kenyan human rights defenders.
We demand, 1, the immediate and unconditional release of comrades Bobi Njagi and Nicholas Oyoo. An official explanation from the Ugandan government on why Kenyan citizens were abducted on Ugandan soil. We remind President Yoweri Museveni and his regime, the era of fear is over. Sure. You cannot abduct solidarity.
Activists and rights groups have condemned the incident, describing it as a part of what they termed as a growing pattern of cross-border repression, and further calling on the Kenyan government to engage with Ugandan authorities to secure the release of the 2, and also calling for an end to criminalizing cross-border activism.
We demand intervention by the government of Kenya to protect its citizens and hold the Museveni regime accountable. We demand urgent attention from the East African community, African Union,
now
the international human rights bodies to investigate and address.
Now, you had her very well. Her demands, like especially the bodies. He is mentioning the East African community, international human rights bodies. Let me actually I want to expound more on that. I want to throw more light on that because there are very many bodies, but what are they specifically talking about?
We demand urgent attention from the East African community.
That is East African community.
African Union.
African Union.
The international human rights bodies to investigate.
International human rights bodies to investigate
and address this abuse of power.
On Monday, Ugandan authorities broke their silence, sparking renewed concern over the rise of cross-border abductions in the East African region.
Now let's dive into this because it's very important about the bodies she just mentioned about. She's calling out the human rights, international human rights bodies. Of course, wayogera bwatyo abo of course ayogera ku United Nations human rights. Kuba eyo jeri wadde nti fengaffe abafirika I don't believe nti etuyamba nnyo. Gwe soko tunulire ekibadde kigenda maaso mu Congo. Tunulire kigenda maaso mu Sudani. Ekigenda maaso wano mu Uganda. Tunulire ekyaliwo on the 18th and the 19th of 2020. So, nze nsuubira nti yes, tuyina of course okuba calling out era ne tubategeeza nti no bayina okola omulimu gwa, for example the United Nations Human Rights Council, here Geneva, because Kenya I believe is part tewali yadde nakubuusabuusa. So kiba kitegeeza in the case of such an incident nti neggwanga Uganda liwambye bannansi ba Kenya, yes, awo abalina okola omulimu gwabwe era ba activists bano batuufu calling out the international human rights bodies. Body kyendala gye ba calling out, of course, the office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights. And then kuba wotunuulira international human rights bodies, of course, zanjawulo ne treaties zanjawulo za United Nations. Waliyo Human Rights Committee, Committee on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights, waliyo Committee on the Elimination of Discrimination Against Women, Committee on the Rights of the Child, Committee Against Torture, Committee on the Elimination of Racial Discrimination, Committee on Rights of Persons with Disabilities. But in this context, twogera ku basically human rights ndowooza ne committee against torture kwezuze zino kubeera nga zifokasinga ku nsonga eno. Kakati bano bana Kenya bawambibwa mu Uganda nga bazze kukyalira His Excellency Kyagulanyi. Si musango, waliwo abaagala okwegezebwaza, nsiba mbagamba, waliwo abaagala okwegezebwaza naye gwe si musango. Tulabye Ruto nga ajja Uganda nga akampeeningirako Museveni nga ye teyawambibwa tongamba ati yali president anabafuuka president okitegeera. Yeah. And then according out to the African Union, of course, the African Union waliyo African Commission on Human and People's Rights, that is the ACHPR, the African Commission on Human and People's Rights. You know, currently the offices are usually in the Gambia. Yeah, the Gambia. Then waliyo the African Court on Human and People's Rights, that is the AFCHPR. Nendala of course mpitirivu nnyo. Naye eziri wane ewaffe zo zikoze mulimo. Of course, the last time I checked in the Kenyan Embassy yali efunye obubaka buno era newandiikira Minister of Foreign Affairs mu Uganda wano nti ensonga eno gitegeddeko era beetaaga okumanya etuusewa. Since last Wednesday up to today tewali n'omu yali azemu bawulizaako nti babalina kye bavudde ne boogera okujjako recently police bwe yavuddeyo ate neekola ki neebeewakana negamba nti affe situbayina negamba ate tubayina adde n'akamu naye ng'ate ono John Maina ono musajja ono actual lawyer Munnakenya omukubbo ali mu nsonga zino ono akugambye
Kenyan and
ono akugambye on John Maina akugambye nti bo babadde specific from day one tebagambangako nti nno poliisi ya Uganda ye yabductinga yabductinga Nicholas Oyoo and Bobi Njagi. No way. Akutegeeza bulungi nti babadde consistent from the very start nti it is the army not the police. Babadde consistent from the start. I don't know whether you heard him very well. Naye ndowooza ayinza okuba ali mu kuba ndabye gundi eziwerako badde ngezaako okufollowinga ensonga eno. Let me also give you this. Maybe akyogeredde mu a video and I want you to watch this as well.
And marched to the Ugandan Embassy to push for the release of 2 Kenyan political detainees, Bobi Njagi and Nicholas Oyoo. The activists are now calling on East African heads of state to address the alarming abduction trend in the region and allow for freedom of speech.
No one has ever said that Nicholas and Bob were abducted by the Ugandan police.
Okawulidde bulungi. No one has ever said that Nicholas Oyoo and Bobi Njagi were abducted by the Uganda police. Continue, John.
We have been consistent saying that Nicholas and Bob were abducted by the Ugandan military.
They demand immediate release of Njagi and Oyoo and immediate investigations leading to the abduction.
And I want to say this to the Ugandan government, that we have to give you 24 hours under which we want to see Oyoo and Bobi Njagi, whether life or death, here in Kenya. Yes. And we are very much aware of the theatrics used by the Ugandan government to silence their critics under the NUP party.
When we say that we need our comrades back, yes, we are serious. Yes.
They say abductions have been recurring, especially on the people fighting for the rights, and their voices are just silenced.
We remind President Yoweri Museveni and his regime, the era of fear is over. Sure. You cannot abduct solidarity, you cannot silence ideas, and you cannot arrest the determination of a generation rising for freedom.
We say clearly, stop abducting Kenyans, stop abducting Africans. Sure. Stop persecuting Africans who stand with progressive struggles like that of Bobi Wine and the people of Uganda.
Oyoo and Njagi were abducted on October 1st in Uganda by 4 armed men believed to be security officials. The two, who had joined National Unity Platform presidential candidate Bobi Wine's campaign trail on Tuesday, were reportedly forced into a vehicle and their phones switched off. The incidents come just 4 months after Kenyan activists Boniface Muwonge and Ugandan activist Agatha Atuhaire were arrested in Tanzania and later dumped near their country's borders. Both would later claim they were sexually assaulted by Tanzanian authorities. 9 days after the abduction, the Kenyan government remains quiet about the matter. Although Deputy President Kithure Kindiki this morning left for Uganda to represent Kenya during the 63rd Independence Day celebrations. Catherine Muragit, KTN.
Mr. Speaker, tenda kwanza kwa majina ni Commander in Chief wa Magunzi.
Ndio huyo sasa.
Valdo Mavitu. Unasemanga nini?
Gunzi.
Nataka kutoa order wa wale watu wa country ingine. Nataka kuambia hivi. Huyo mtu mulishika, hatutaki kujua kama ni Mkikuyu, ni Mkale, ni Mjaluo, ni Muluya, sijui ni nini. Huyo ni damu yetu, ni Mkenya mwenzetu. Na mkicheza na Mkenya mwenzetu, sisi tutapotea na Uganda yote. Hatuwadanganyi. Mimi kama Valdo Mavitu nitatoa order ya magunzi wote na tutajikuta tuko Uganda. Na tutapotea mpaka na Museveni. Tutapotea mpaka na Museveni.
Wewe ndio Saddam Hussein mwenyewe. Saddam Hussein.
Uganda, unatudharau. Nimekuwa Uganda juzi, wako na maji ya kukunywa lakini hawana kikombe. Kikombe unanunua. Unanunua kikombe ya kukunywa maji. Alafu unadharau wa Kenya. Uganda nimeenda na 2,000, nimelala na wasichana kaa 20. 2,000. Nimelala na wasichana kama 20. Alafu Uganda ianze kubishana na Kenya. Ndatoa order. Nimesikia umepewa 24 hours, umepewa 3 seconds. Mimi ndaongezea 48. Na hiyo 48 hours, kitu ya kwanza ni Mkenya wetu nataka kuona kesho ako Kenya. Mimi kama Valdo Mavitu naambia Museveni, hata siambii watu wa Uganda. Museveni, toa order. Mkenya achiliwe. Hatutaki kujua kama sijui alikuwa rijadi mtu wa kunini. Wacha Mkenya mwenzetu. Na tukisikia hata umbu, tukisikia hata umbu ya Uganda imeuma Mkenya. Umbu.
Samee Mavitu, samee.
Mr. Speaker, nikimalizia maneno ya Uganda, mimi naambia Bobi Wine akae imara na kuja haya maguns Kenya wakupe kiti Uganda. Kuja chukue maguns Kenya wakupe kiti Uganda. Bobi Wine, kiti chukuliwi na matako, kiti inachukuliwa na nguvu. Nikimalizia Mr. Speaker, nimesikia mumetusi sana Mheshimiwa Aladwa.
All right, I just wanted to refresh your mind about how our friends in Kenya think about us and what is on their mind about this issue. Of course, they are angry, they are very furious, and of course, all they need is their comrade, that is the chairman of the Free Kenyan movement, Bobi Njagi, as well as the Secretary General for the same movement, Nicholas Oyoo. Very many people ask me, why are you so much into this issue and all that kind of thing, update after update. Yes, these are comrades that came to stand in solidarity with our cause. Remember, our cause is none other than creating a non-fictional socio-economic and political change in this, our country, Uganda. Uganda is a country whose leadership has not changed for the past 40 years. And it has not been, of course, out of our mandate. It has been a stolen victory for the past elections that we've had, 2006, 2011, 2016, 2021. So the time is long overdue for the old man Museveni to step aside for the new generation to take over. But hey, the guy says, I still have the stamina. However much when he starts to talk, his mind is stuck in 1925 and in 1931. Actually, during the recent nominations, the speech he gave out of the blue, everyone was shocked. Instead of mentioning the year he's being nominated to for, like 2025, 2031, his mind rolled back to 1925 and in 1931. For those who watched him speak, I'm sure you were also shocked. But not shocked because that is what old age comes with. So such a person of such a mindset is not fit to be at the helm of this country's leadership. That's why this new generation, this Ugandan population of which 85% are below the age of 35 are saying enough is enough of this madness. Uganda is 63 years of age since independence. But guess what? One man, Museveni, has ruled for more than 40 years. What a shame. And of course, with nothing to show. With nothing to show. Corruption, unemployment, land grabbing, nepotism, tribalism. You know, if I go that lane, this show will actually go for hours because there is a lot to talk about in that line. So, if we have friends, for example, Nicholas Oyoo, Bobi Njagi from our neighbor Kenya, come to visit us, show us solidarity. We have to be there for each other if one of them lands into a problem. Like as of now, they were abducted. And guess what? It's our responsibility to also mount the pressure, to keep the pressure, to sustain this pressure until they are released. Because they committed no single crime. And if they had committed a crime, that's not how someone who has committed a crime is treated. Show up as a police officer, a trained police officer. Ask that person politely that, hey, you have got a case to answer at police, you are needed. Escort that person to police. Summon that person. Don't just abduct them into... Because if I remember very well, Atinda, who survived this abduction, the gentleman on the far right, he narrated how this entire abduction took place. Like some men were in uniform, some were not in uniform, they were wearing guns and all that kind of a thing. So imagine. But of course, for us as Ugandans, at least we can visualize. Actually, I could visualize what he was narrating, like comparing with other abductions, like the likes of when they were abducting Edward Sebufu, Achilles Chivumbi, Mugumya Gaddafi, and so many of our comrades who are rotting in jail for simply associating themselves with the national platform, associating themselves with His Excellency Kyagulanyi Ssentamu. But guess what? We are so many who are angry and very hungry for change. They can't abduct all of us. They can't put us all in prison. So the best is to keep pushing, because at the end of the day, the story always ends as the rise and the fall of Museveni. That's the end story. That's the storyline for all dictators. The story always ends as the rise and the fall of so and so. So Museveni is not an exception. Like it's going to be the same story. Like, of course, the headlines are going to be all over Africa, the entire planet, like the rise and the fall of dictator Museveni. Imagine, the guy has ruled 40 complete years. It's a shame. No wonder comrades that come to show solidarity with the most powerful force in the country right now, that is spearheaded by His Excellency Kyagulanyi Ssentamu Robert, commonly known as Bobi Wine. Yeah, they chicken out and end up, grabbing anyone they see associating with the man. Anyway, that was the update. I'll get back here in case there is any other development about this issue. But all I can ask you comrades out there, Ugandans, our comrades in Kenya, our comrades in Tanzania, please sustain the pressure. Keep speaking out. Any day that passes, let's actually not relent on this issue. Let's keep pushing. Let's keep demanding for the release of Nicholas Oyoo and Bob Njagi. I narrated to you a story of most of our comrades back here in Uganda who actually, upon abduction, never show up again. Case in example is John Bosco Chibalama. Just to go to Mr. Google and type in John Bosco Chibalama. He was abducted on the 3rd of June, that is 2019. I can confirm to you, up to date, no one has ever seen him again. There is another example of Muzei John Damulira, who was abducted on the 23rd of November, that is 2020, and up to date, no one has ever seen him again. Those are just a few. There are very many others. And some abductions actually don't capture media attention. Remember, like Uganda's media, when you count the radio stations and TV stations, they are actually not even more than 350, like countrywide. So there are those areas where you will not find any radio station, where you will not find any TV station, where you will not find even internet connection, where you will not find even electricity. And guess what? People in those areas also love change. They are advocates of change in those areas. And once such a person misses or is being abducted for speaking out, who is going to report such an incident? No one. That's why I'm like, there are certain abductions or incidents that don't capture media attention, that will never even know about. So if such a comrade Nicholas Oyoo and Bobi Njagi get abducted and you get to know about it, don't keep quiet. That's my humble appeal to you. It's the JB Muwonge Talk Show. This has been another episode about the same issue. I'll come back to you next time with any other update in case we get one about the same issue. I'll keep coming until these comrades get their freedom. Peace and love.